The ZA Tech Show is made possible by Vodacom. Power to you at vodacom.co.za. And by BlackBerry. Love doing business on your BlackBerry smartphone at blackberry.co.za.
Good evening and welcome to the first ZA Tech Show of 2012. Hooray! It's a very intimate ZA Tech Show tonight because everyone who's everyone, including Simon and Brett Ski, are at CES, obviously. So joining me in the studio tonight is the only other person in South Africa who's not cool enough to be at CES, who is Mr. Nick Callegari. Hello, Nick.
Coming to you from the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm right there with you, so it's okay. No, it's cool. It's always nice to be in Joburg for summer. This is our first live show of 2012, which means that there isn't that much to talk about because obviously
only
everyone's been on holiday
until the world ends, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the world could end now. You know.
Yeah.
I think we can be pretty proud of what we've achieved.
We'll have another whiskey and then it can end.
Yeah, not until the end of the show, please. So let's talk about CES. I mean, obviously, we don't want to go into too much detail because we want to save all the juicy bits for Simon and Brett when they get back. But it has been quite exciting to see all the shiny gadgetlings that have been coming out from Vegas. Incidentally, apparently the porn convention, which is usually nicely aligned with CES, was moved this year. So I'm sure everyone must be very disappointed.
To another city or moved?
Moved in time. They were also obviously afraid of the end of the world, and they thought they'd better not provoke any deities this close to when things end. Yeah, I mean, some really sexy-looking Ultrabooks coming out of there.
Yeah, I think Ultrabooks are the flavor of the month. Last year CES looked a bit like a drugstore. There were so many tablets everywhere that.
Yeah.
Lol.
Lol.
I'm here all week, people.
This is why we love Nick.
So it's nice to see that the tablet market is starting to sort of mature in a way, and people are quite sure of what they want from a tablet now. And Ultrabooks seem to be the next sort of like wave
the new frontier. I'll be honest, I think that the term Ultrabook is a little bit over the top. Like, it sounds like it should transform and be able to battle the asteroids that are about to come hitting the Earth in a couple of months. Ultrabook, transform! And I think the announcement that particularly brought this to life for me was Lenovo's new ThinkPad Ultrabook, what they're calling their ThinkPad Ultrabook. And if you look at it, it looks exactly like a ThinkPad. You know, slightly thinner, but not the Razer look of the Air at all, and quite powerful, but it still essentially looks like a ThinkPad. So aren't Ultrabooks just new laptops?
You know, I've always been in two minds about the netbook, for example. I think the Ultrabook is trying to be the next step in what the netbook really should have been. The thing about the Ultrabook is we're going to have to wait and see. Equipment manufacturers are looking for new ways to spin their products and new ways to make more money out of people, and they find these really interesting words to describe their products. I mean, one that's getting me at the moment is cloud. Where the hell did this term actually come from?
Acer just launched their Acer Cloud, didn't they?
Everything's in the cloud, even payroll. I mean, there's companies advertising on the radio talking about, and all your data is in the cloud. I can guarantee you that everybody listening to that radio show is looking up into the sky going, it's in the cloud.
It's like magic what they can do these days. Yeah, I think cloud is actually quite an accurate description for how most people see the internet in their mind, though.
I mean, back when I was writing for Computing SA back in the day, you always used to get like these network diagrams, and the internet was always represented by a little cloud. But I have no idea what the origin of that cloud is, and it's amazing that something so benign actually became such a huge buzzword.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you in general terms about how these buzzwords sort of sweep through the industry, and there's virtualization and green IT, and it's all codswallop, really. But I mean, cloud does seem to have stuck as a concept of way, a way of doing business, which kind of makes sense to me.
Before cloud, it was organic, and before
Sure.
organic, it was on demand, and before on demand, it was utility computing.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing, just with a
There you
different
go.
name.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, is there anything that you're really excited about seeing at CES?
I don't know. This is the first year I can't call CES. Like in the past, you've been able to sort of predict, yes, it's either going to be the huge influx of netbooks, or it's going to be mobile, or it's going to be tablets last year. But this year, very difficult to call. I wouldn't be surprised if there would be less gadgets and more sort of services.
Maybe. So, I mean, the TVs that have been coming out have been quite interesting for me as a sort of merging of those two things. I mean, there was an Ubuntu TV, which makes me giggle and get all twitchy, and the first Android TV running on Ice Cream Sandwich, both of which look really interesting, and both adapting the interfaces. Kind of simplifying them even further. I read a fantastic article by someone at Canonical who was speaking about how the biggest challenge, obviously, with creating a TV interface is that there are so many walled gardens, and you probably know this very well working for DStv Online. But how they really are trying to find a single interface that's just beautiful and lovely, and you can plug everything into. And they're thinking that possibly a Linux-based platform could do this because it's just less contentious. I don't know.
I've always been very outspoken against 3D in TVs, for example. It's a huge gimmick, and I have a deep set hate for 3D movies as well.
Yeah.
If you ask me where I would like TVs to go, it's the smart TV route. It's being able to do stuff with your TV instead of just watching TV.
But then, I don't know. I mean, I suppose I've just have been outside of the TV loop for so long. I don't really understand why you would have a TV anymore. I mean, you just need a slightly larger screen in one room of your house, that's hooked up to the network and just operates like everything else.
Maybe overseas, but locally, and that's something we're finding at DStv, for example. A big challenge is internet connectivity. We'd love to be able to push all sorts of video and on-demand services directly to your TV through an ADSL line, but the fact of the matter is, not everybody has one, and the people who have them can't necessarily afford the fast speeds that are required to run those services.
Do you
don't want to sort of start a video and sit for 25 or 30 minutes, wait for the thing to buffer, and then start watching it. I mean, I was making the joke the other night, South Africa is one of the only countries in the world where a 3-minute YouTube video can take 17 minutes to load.
Yeah, it does. In my house regularly. Do you think that all the cables that are landing next year are going to make a different wax and ACE and
look, it makes bandwidth cheaper. I mean, we saw that with CCOM. When CCOM landed, everybody just jumped on the bandwagon and started slashing their bandwidth prices to levels which I would say are probably not sustainable in the long run. The trick is that local loop, getting access to that copper.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately Telkom,
or bypassing the copper completely. So I mean, ICASA finally seems to have moved their cumbersome corpse into talking about getting into new frequencies and that sort of thing, which does look exciting.
Wireless is definitely going places, but and I've said this before on the show, but call me a dinosaur. I still like
you're
to
a
be.
Dinosaur now.
Thanks.
Which dinosaur?
I want to be a raptor.
As long as you're not as long as you're not a triceratops. They don't exist.
Okay.
Anyway.
Sorry. Anyway. We mourn the triceratops.
Yeah, sorry, where were we?
No, we're talking about the local loop, and wireless is coming along, and things like the Spectrum auctions that were meant to happen, that were put off and put on and put off again, showed promise, but there is no substitute for the speed and for the reliability of being connected to a wire.
Sure.
And all this fiber that's going into the ground around Joburg is definitely going to make stuff happen. But it's always going to. It's not really making stuff happen. I mean, I've got a manhole right outside my front gate, and the guys from Dark Fiber Africa were in that manhole the other day, and I went out with beers and pizza and all sorts of other things. And,
gave them all a pat on the back. So I'm trying really hard not to make an inappropriate joke about the term manhole right now. Sorry.
Cheers.
Well, before trying to not fall into talking just about what DStv is doing and TV locally, but I mean, there was some fairly big news recently, which is that DStv Online has started offering beta trials of their online box office service. Yeah. Do you have any feedback on how that's going? Can you talk about it?
We initially opened it up to a set number of beta users, and it got snapped up.
Yeah, I'm sure. I tried to sign up, and all 1,000 invites were gone.
Yeah.
There was a little tear.
Did you see the sad face when it says, "Oh, sorry, we're full"?
Was that you?
Yeah, that was. But,
way to make people feel better about not getting what they want.
Look, it'll
Sad
open up
face.
Again. It's not the last beta that we're going to be putting out. There's going to be various betas. I mean, we were overwhelmed by how quickly the accounts were taken up.
It was the same deal when Box Office and the PVR launched as well, right? It was sort of far exceeding expectations. I just have one question. Are people do they need to be DStv subscribers to use the online service?
Anybody can use it. Yeah.
Doesn't matter what ISP
you're not limited to an ISP, and you don't have to be a DStv subscriber.
Right, finally.
Which is pretty cool.
So 2012 might actually be the year that it becomes viable to snip the line.
Look,
there's lots have really fast bandwidth.
There's lots of things happening.
Yeah.
And I wish I could speak about them all, but
sure.
Speaking about those things is way above my pay grade.
I won't push you, but have some more whiskey.
Everything after
we'll
2 drinks is off the record. You realise this.
Yeah, of course. Except it will be recorded.
And I keep saying it to everybody. I said it to everybody last year, sort of November time. November this year is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is. There's going to be so much that we have on the go, and so many new products and services that it's our CEO John Kotsiftis, he says that we not building a business for now or even next year or even the year after. The future is in video on demand.
Sure.
The future is in online technologies, and we got to start building a business that's looking beyond 2016.
Future proof, yeah. So, I mean, talking about industries and how they're changing, two pieces of news that were quite interesting. So, firstly, according to Nielsen, 2011 was the year in which online music sales finally superseded CD sales. Finally happened.
Yes.
Even though people like my mom still go and buy every Idols compilation that there is.
It's actually, and you read something like that, and then you walk into like a Look and Listen, for example, and just people watch. Take a look at what people are buying. People are not buying CDs.
Yeah, they're buying games.
They're going into Look and Listen to buy games, to buy DVDs, to buy TV series.
Well, even Look and Listen now has launched an e-commerce site, so they're selling music directly as well. So it must have penny must have dropped there as well.
Yeah, that's they far from offering the broad catalog that something like an iTunes would offer, for example.
And I must say that even looking for local music on iTunes, not that I've ever actually legally bought a song in my life. I'm sorry, deities who are looking down at us because it's 2012. But looking for South African songs, the selection is actually surprisingly impressive, even on iTunes.
And that's what I like about what the local companies are doing.
Yeah.
Musica has had an online music store for yonks, and I remember signing up for this thing when I was in varsity and downloading music, and it was darn expensive, but it was cool that I could download music and not have to walk into music and buy the CD.
Bro.
Like totally,
like the future.
Get a CD down on a 56k modem.
Musica for a while had this sort of interface in store which was run by the Connect. You'd sort of, it was gesture based. It was quite cool, quite a clever little hack.
Yeah, it was very cool. There was a really cool app that was I don't know if you've heard of Project Dragonfly. I don't know if Microsoft still runs it, but or Project Firefly. It's Dragonfly or Firefly, one of the two. I can't remember. It was a long time ago.
Firefly's a cooler name.
Firefly, definitely.
Forever Whedon.
We love you, Nathan Fillion.
Oh, that man is such a fox. I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Keep going.
I forgot. Oh yes, and the bunch of young bright developers from locally entered a global competition. They actually went to the finals, which was happening in Europe somewhere, and they had a system that a Musica or a Look and Listen, for example, could use to help people preview stuff.
Yeah.
So you'd have touch screens all over the place, and instead of picking up the CD case and sort of perusing the art and looking at the names and going, oh, this sounds like it could be good. You would have these screens with headphones all over the place, and you could select DVDs, watch trailers, listen to tracks. You could even check if the store had stock, and then place your order and just go to the till, pick up your order, and pay. And it was. I don't know why companies like Music and Look and Listen still haven't adopted that type of model.
Yeah. Have you seen that Home Depot in the States has started trialing PayPal points at their tills?
Oh, that's
so
cool.
You can pay with PayPal. I mean, how cool. I'm not quite sure about the mechanics, but...
Well, everything's your credit card nowadays. I mean, you can pay with this. You get your contactless credit cards that you just tap on the...
Yeah, NFC is one to watch for 20 I'm so sick of Trends I'm not even going to bring it up. Speaking about changing industries, though, it was quite interesting. They've been talking about this for a while, but it looks like Kodak is finally going to make the move and file for bankruptcy. They sort of seem to be in their death throes trying to sell off patents, but it looks like it would be, if they got money from patents, would be to buoy up the life raft for a couple of extra months.
Yeah,
and that's a brand that when I was growing up, I mean, that was one of those unassailable brands.
It's sad in a way. It's sad that they weren't able to move quickly enough with the industry.
Yeah, I mean, they virtually invented the digital camera, and they just didn't believe in it enough. They decided to back inkjet printers.
Their digital cameras weren't really that good either.
Sure.
I remember looking at a Kodak probably about 2 years ago, and there were some HP cameras, older HP cameras that were outperforming these things. So it's
well, I mean, Fuji, which is far more sort of in their space. I mean, it's just totally out innovated them. Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's a bit of a lesson, but it's strange to think that the giants are starting to fall, and it's going to be interesting to watch what other. There's a number of industries where entire industries are going to crumble, like travel agents. I mean, goodness sake, they're not going to be around in 5 years. And thank goodness.
I was listening to one of the other podcasts that I subscribed to this afternoon, and
you cheat on ZA Tech Show with other podcasts?
No, definitely
Nick
not.
Callegari.
This is not a tech-related podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's a geeky podcast. It's actually pretty cool. And one of the panelists was speaking about an article that he read, and I'll try and find the link and we'll post it on the ZA Tech Show website, which listed the top 10 companies that are most likely to file for bankruptcy in 2012. And almost at the top of that list was a tiny little company that maybe people have heard of called Netflix.
Ah, that's interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Considering Netflix traffic outperformed porn, I think it was, a year ago as the most downloaded content off the internet.
Really? I did not know that. If you can beat out porn, then you've got a winner on your hands.
Well, I think it was paid for porn. So,
okay.
But still. And I thought it was very interesting that something like a Netflix would be on that list, and you sort of look at the way Netflix has evolved over the last couple of years. I mean, their DVD business is not doing well. Yes, they managed to put Blockbuster out of business, but people are subscribing to Netflix for their online offering. And their online offering, having used it, is not that strong.
Yeah.
The quality is not great, and their selection of titles is not that great. The only thing they have going for them is their recommendation engine.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I find it interesting because when they did try to split the two businesses entirely from a brand perspective, people just hated it and pushed back really hard. So I don't know. I mean, like you say, I mean, the online service seems to be so flawed that it almost can't stand by itself. And
we've got this big behemoth in the corner called Amazon, which is just it's launched its own sort of Netflix type service.
Sure.
For $79 a year.
Yeah, crazy.
You have access to that entire
catalog. And now
catalog.
It's controlling the hardware that you're downloading things from as well. Totally. Because I mean, definitely when I was talking to non-geek friends about the sort of geeky Christmas presents they were planning to buy for people, the Fire was mentioned. And these are people who wouldn't even know how to get a Fire. They know you can go to Incredible Connection and get an iPad now, but they were talking about it and saying, isn't that the cheapest, right? So I think by June, July, it's going to be interesting.
I'm actually dumbfounded by the proliferation of those types of gadgets. I mean, I just look at and I'd love to know what numbers the F&B is running with their iPad
their deal,
because ever since F&B launched their deal, I know in my circle of family, 6 members of my family who have all bought iPads in the last 2 months
through
F&B.
Sure.
I would absolutely love to know what the iPad market share in this country has done ever since FNB launched that offering. And these aren't people who are sophisticated. These are people who...
I'm sure your family would love to hear you say that about them.
No, they admit it. They admit it. I mean, I've got my brother-in-law is an accountant, so he's relatively sophisticated when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
My father-in-law is a doctor. He's an old school doctor. He calls me regularly for tech support over the phone. I mean, I've spent the last week setting up his iPad, opening up a US account for him, showing him where to buy vouchers, etc. He is besotted with this thing. My wife, who I can't even buy an iPod for, is glued to her iPad now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just love watching kids use the thing. It's so exciting because it's just so innovative. So another thing from CES, this is the last CES thing I'll bring up. I'll leave some stuff for the boys when they get back.
Well, we're not there, so we don't know what's there. We're sort of speculating.
I'm not grumpy about it at all. No, I'm kidding. So one of the interesting things coming out of that as well have been innovations in the one laptop per child project, which is now no longer a one laptop per child. For quite a while, they've been talking about tablets rather as a more affordable and more multi-purpose as well for the kids. You know, it's just a better reading tool, better multimedia tool for learning videos. So they've just unveiled their new laptop. Their new tablet. It looks very rugged. It's got a solar-powered panel. So does the Kindle now, incidentally. Which is another sort of great device for kids in underprivileged areas. Some great trial studies running in Ghana and a bunch of places. So exciting.
Nicholas Negroponte is swearing at every single corner. Shame. Perk.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really do feel, though, that if you can put even quite a fairly basic device, but every Android device is an Android device at the end of the day. If you can put that in the hands of a 10-year-old, they will figure out how to do cool shit on it. They really will, because that's what 10-year-olds do.
There was a video that you picked a couple of weeks ago with the kid playing with the iPad and then the magazine, the 1-year-old, and treating the magazine as a broken iPad.
Yeah.
My 18-month-old son is like that. You give him an iPad, he can resize photos, he knows how to find the camera and speak into the camera.
Yeah.
Give him a magazine,
Yeah.
and he doesn't know what to do with it.
That's amazing.
It's and something that's even more interesting is my wife and I are busy looking for schools at the moment because you have to enroll them when they're fetuses to get into a good school.
More reasons to never have children. Sorry.
Some of the private schools, their stationery lists include an iPad.
No.
And
in primary school?
For grade 1.
Wow.
We
had to buy book bags for the back of our chair.
Yeah, now you have to buy crumpler bags for their iPads.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I just thought that was fascinating that iPads are actually...
What Lani school are you applying to?
No, we're not applying to Lani schools at all. We're applying to fairly middle-of-the-range private schools.
iPads. It's genius, but quite surprising. Wow.
Well, my son's not going to school with any an iPad, put it that way. But it just floored me. It really did.
So this is a very good time for us to take a quick moment. Andy Hatfield, who is a regular guest on the show, has just had a bouncing baby girl. So just a little congratulations to Andy.
Well done, Chana.
A mini Hatfield.
Jeez, is he calling her Jill? This is
Jack and Jill. That's terrible. She's very, very cute.
Or is he going to call her the Beanstalk? This is Jack and the Beanstalk.
You didn't name your kids, did you?
No, I didn't.
I'm sure your wife drew the line. Yeah. No, I mean, it's so congrats, Andy. We're very happy for you. I'm sure that he's in big trouble. He's going to be wrapped around her little finger from the day she turns.
Totally. I mean,
2 days.
But he's a good dad. You just look at the, he took his son to Hooters for crying out loud. What better dad could there be?
What a legend. Anyway, staying on the kind of general topic of children, it was interesting to see the matric results come out recently. So, I mean, it's slightly off topic, but not really, because the one that's always interesting to watch are the maths results and maths and science. And obviously, I mean, we're looking at the next generation of social entrepreneurs. We're looking at the next generation of developers, and how our matriculants are doing in maths tells us a lot about where we're going to be in 5 years' time as a technology hub and as an industry, and it's really not promising.
No.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the matrics who passed.
Yes, well done.
And congratulations to all those matrics.
I hope you're having lots of sex on Matric Rage right now.
Totally. Just don't get sand in your butthole because it chafes. And
Not that
Congratulations to all those. Did you turn me down when I said that?
No.
No. To all the guys who got distinctions and who are going to university and going to study degrees, congratulations. Well done. You deserve every little bit.
And do a BSc. It's just do it. The industry is so bright.
Absolutely. You deserve every little bit of honor that you get. What I don't agree with, though, is, and people can shoot me down for saying this, but the pass rate went up to 70% from 67%. What was it last year? 63% last year. But what people fail to realize is that the mark that you need to pass has come down.
Yeah.
I think the pass mark is now 35%.
I think it's quite complicated. I think you've got to get 40% in either in a first language,
yes,
and then 30% in 3 other subjects. And you have to get an average of 35%. But, I mean, you can not know 70% of a subject and pass it.
Do you want to be operated on by a doctor who got 35% for biology?
Not really.
No.
He'll understand 35% of what the organ does.
Yeah. Look, Jacob Zuma in the ANC centenary over the weekend, when he delivered his January 8th address, he did bring up the education system, and he did bring it up. He did mention the word crisis, and he said that it's a challenge that has reached crisis levels and something needs to be done. OBE has fallen flat on its face. Something needs to be done, and I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But maths and science, as you mentioned, are key. I mean, it's, I'm sorry to bring up my son again, but when he's old enough, maths and science are going to be not negotiable.
Sure.
You can do any other subjects, but maths and science are going to be there. I just don't know what it is. I don't know why people can't get maths and science.
In fairness, people who are failing maths and science probably haven't been taught it properly, since grade 1. And the problem with subjects like that is that if you miss out on foundations, you sort of buggered for the whole thing. Just on that note of ANC centenary, I'm just looking at a report.
Happy birthday, comrades, by the way.
Yeah. Just looking at a report that Brands I released about sort of the number of social media mentions. It's quite interesting. So apparently there was something like 4 million rands worth of advertising value that was generated on social media about the event. Yeah, 4 million, which isn't that much considering they spent somewhere around 100 million on the event. Although obviously they weren't doing it to appeal to people on Twitter necessarily.
Look, there's all sorts of questions you got to ask about how they measure advertising value equivalent, etc. AVE is a flawed measurement from the beginning, because people just suck figures out of their thumbs. So it's if you were to have handed AVE over to a PR agency, for example, they probably would have multiplied by 3, 5, some even 7,
15
or 15.
I've heard 15.
So that number could have been anywhere between 4 million and 27 million rand. Yeah, I think it's perception more than anything else. But
it was very interesting to see the topics on Twitter, because I mean, obviously Twitter is one of those things that spreads around the world in a very beautiful kind of way, and kind of how things that I think South Africans take largely for granted were sort of picked up in a big way. So a lot of the international conversation was about the bull and the sort of animal sacrifice, which I mean, I'm a vegetarian, and anyway, but getting less political and back to tech news. What else happened in the last week? Not much. Everyone was getting drunk. Vodacom recently was granted a license to sell insurance, which is a little bit interesting. Now, you probably can read too much into this. I mean, the most likely reason that they've been granted the license is because they already offer insurance for their cell phones, so you can insure your phone or your tablet or whatever. But it is quite amusing to speculate that Vodacom, which has an enormous market penetration amongst people who probably don't have any kind of life insurance or funeral policy already, could start to offer financial services. And if you think about a service like M-Pesa, which they're currently offering through Nedbank, I think, it actually seems like quite a logical leap.
Yeah.
Mobile.
This isn't the first financial service that Vodacom's offered. They had the credit card a little while ago. I don't know if they still do have the credit card. It's very attractive to have everything all in one place. I get my cell phone, I get my broadband, I get my insurance, I get my credit card.
Also, the average South African consumer has a lot of trust for Vodacom, right? Or for MTN, whoever they're with.
Sure.
Very interesting.
But you talk like that about companies that are getting into sort of non-core areas of business. My wife got some mail the other day. She used to drive a BMW, and she still receives a whole lot of pamphlets and invitations to come test drive cars and stuff in the post, even though she doesn't drive a BM anymore. And we got a very posh printed brochure on BMW home loans.
Oh my goodness. My home funded by BMW. As long as you can put that decal on your front door, I'm sure people would do it.
And the whole thing was life is all about living, and they got their sheer driving pleasure. It was sheer owning your own home is sheer pleasure.
Yeah.
It was very tied into the BMW brand and values, but we were just dumbfounded. I mean, getting a home loan from BMW,
Although,
a car maker.
I mean, remember that when Apple launched an iPod, everyone said, what on earth are Apple doing? They're not Walkman. That's not their area of business. When they released a phone, everyone said, Apple, what are you doing? That's not your core area of business. But now I think that if Apple tomorrow launched a car or a home loan service, people would go gaga over it, and they'd queue for 2 months outside the iStore in London to be the first.
It'd be called iHome. Oh, no, wait, that's already taken.
Oh, yeah. They could just start reproducing all of their software stuff as real world things. iHome, iCloud. You could have a little cloud that follows you around.
Oh, gee a little while ago, credit cards were the flavor of the week. And I think
Gucci credit cards
with the NCA and with FICA and whatever other acts have come around ever since then. It's been very difficult to get credit cards and credits, etc. So these companies who have all been, I mean, at one stage you could go to the corner cafe, get fish chips and a credit card.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a company that wasn't offering credit cards. I think the next logical step for those companies that are wanting to make money out of the financial services industry is insurance.
Yeah.
They can't give credit anymore. Funeral cover is saturated. Life cover is saturated. The next thing is short-term insurance.
Saturated, but it's amazing how those companies that really target the sort of bottom of the pyramid with funeral cover, they do very well. So
it's because they're affordable as well. I mean, funeral cover from like Pep is like $20 a month or something.
Yeah. I love the idea of going to Pep and getting funeral cover.
Yeah,
so crazy.
At one stage, you could go to Pep and get a bank account as well. There's a mobile bank called Wizit that was selling starter packs.
I don't know who comes up with these names. Wizit and Pocket and
Wizit actually. Disclaimer: I used to work with them when I was at my previous company, so I know the business quite well. They white label their product as well, and they sell it off to different.
But they've also got quite an interesting sales model, right? I mean, they've got they're like Whiz Kids, but they're called Whiz Kids or Wizits Kids.
Yeah, I know you get Whiz Kids, yeah.
Yeah. Who are sort of young, cool influencers.
Yeah, and what they do, I mean, the way you open up a Wizit account is you get a starter pack, very similar to a cell phone starter pack. And inside is your bank card, your Maestro debit card, and all your instructions to get up and running. And everything's handled through your cell phone. The Whiz Kid signs you up on the spot with his cell phone.
Yeah.
You just need to provide all the necessary documentation for FICA, for example. But in 15, 20 minutes, you can be up and running with a fully fledged bank account.
It's funny how, as different as our markets are, there are companies, mobile operators in the UK that are seeing enormous success out of the same sort of affiliate marketing model. So it's funny to think, even though our markets are so different, specifically with mobile. I must say, we've been doing a lot of research recently, just literally hanging around taxis and asking people what they do with their cell phones. And I have been flabbergasted as to how many people are using To Go and Facebook, and damn it, they find a way. They find a way, even though it's so difficult. I don't know if you've ever tried enabling the mobile web on a feature phone, like on a Nokia Express Music. It's impossible. I don't know how people figure it out, because I couldn't figure it out. It took me a week, and then I finally had to ask someone, swallowing my geek pride.
Star 111 hash.
It's some crazy USSD
it's a USSD code,
but you can also do it. You can go into the context menu, because a lot of the mobile operators are putting menus on the SIM card now. So you can go into the SIM card menu and you can enable it there in theory, but it kind of doesn't work, and you don't know if you need to have the pay-as-you-go airtime, if you need to actually go and buy a separate data bundle, and how expensive it's going to be. It's actually amazing how people are so resourceful if they're living in townships and are still that active on a service like Facebook. Like, it's incredible. Yeah. Right. What else happened this week? I only have one last piece of news to bring up before we go to picks of the week / talking about resolutions for tech, because I think that might be interesting. Back up, people. Yeah. So I read a study this morning by a research company called Arezzo, I think, that found that 1% of mobile users in the world consume half of the entire world's mobile bandwidth. 1%. It's the 1% we should occupy.
I was just going to say the 1%. Jeez.
Yeah, kind of crazy.
Wow,
do you think you're in that 1%?
I probably am. I would like to know how much of that 1% comes from here.
I doubt.
Yeah,
I doubt much.
It's probably in the hundreds of decimal points.
Absolutely.
But
yeah,
it
might
it
only
makes sense.
be
It
Simon
makes sense.
Dingle. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you obviously are using your phone for a lot more than just downloading apps and things. If you are going,
yeah,
to
it depends. I mean, smartphones, especially nowadays, are becoming very bandwidth heavy.
Yeah.
I was flabbergasted when I switched over from my iPhone to my Android and my Samsung Galaxy S2.
Well done. I think you are one of the very few people who's switched that way.
Just wait.
Oh.
I've got a story about that. No, I got a story about that.
No, I'd like to hear the story.
So I was flabbergasted by how much data this Android phone just chewed. It's like the V8.
You've got to put a data managing app on them.
Yeah, it's like the V8 of the mobile world. This thing just chews data like my Land Rover chews petrol. It's unbelievable. But I was reading something very interesting the other day. It was on Mashable. They said that the 4S, the iPhone 4S, uses almost double the data that Android phones do.
But that's Siri. That's almost entirely Siri.
It's things like iMessages, everything
sure.
that it runs in the background. So and iCloud. I mean, iCloud. Every time you're syncing to the cloud. If you're not connected to a Wi-Fi network, that's going to chow your bandwidth. So I forget where I was going with this conversation.
You're telling us about switching.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
tell us why you went back over to the dark side.
And I've gone back to my Model T
white
Ford,
side.
my 3GS, and it's for the simple reason that I don't like Android. I really don't. It's
a little cute green robot just died somewhere.
A little cute robot, a little apple just got its wings. I got the Samsung Galaxy S2. It's a pretty phone.
Yeah.
It works well. The hardware is fantastic. I love the screen. It's a beautiful phone. It's light. It's thin.
I feel like at the moment, if you're going to go for an Android phone, the Galaxy S2 until the Galaxy Nexus arrives is absolutely what you should buy.
I would argue, speaking to other people, that the HTCs are the ones to go for.
I don't know.
The Sensation or something
HTCs,
like that.
They're nice.
Yes.
They're nice. They're nice like your Aunt
like a
Mabel
cup of
is
tea.
nice.
Yeah.
You know? It's interesting to see that HTC's shares are not looking very healthy at the moment.
Yes. And I don't know what it is, because HTC has been in the industry for so long. Even before they were HTC, they were OEMing stuff for what was that company called? Mate something. Chat room, help me out here.
Are you on the chat room? Because I can't get in.
They were OEMing for a lot of companies, HP for example.
Yeah.
And they just decided that they need to get into the market as well and start as HTC, and they came out with some really good devices. I mean, back in the day, the HTC Touch was a fantastic device. The Diamond was good. I don't know if they went wrong and where they went wrong. It's
it's another one of those things.
Yeah. But coming back to my Samsung, the things I didn't like about the Samsung is the battery life sucked.
Yeah,
it sucked so badly. I couldn't get
that beautiful big shiny screen. It does come at a price.
I couldn't get a day's battery life out of it.
Really?
And
I managed about a day and a half.
I spoke to the guys at Samsung, and they said no. The solution to your battery problem is to buy the extended battery, which will give you an extra 4 hours in the day. And I just can't. This thing, I had to buy 4 different chargers for all 4 places where I would be in a day, just to make sure that my phone had enough juice. And then the amount of bandwidth that it used.
Sure. Look, I mean, you do need to hack an Android a little bit. Like, you've got to invest that time in putting a good data manager on it and doing things to preserve the battery life and all of that. But I don't know. I've just avoided going towards any Apple product apart from my little iPod Shuffle, because I know that once I'm in there, I'll be gone.
I am by no means an Apple fanboy. In fact, I cringe every time people tweet Apple fanboy news and this phone is the iPhone 5 rumors and this rumor and that rumor. I actually unfollow people who tweet Apple rumors. I despise Apple fanboyery. But I will never use another phone.
Really?
I will never use another phone.
Interesting.
It's
okay. So on that note, I would like to hear what your pick of the week is, please, Mr. Callegari.
My iPhone 3GS. There's a really cool app that I stumbled on for the iPad. I've been a big user of Flipboard.
Yeah.
Which is
beautiful.
Which for those of you who don't know what it is,
all two of you.
Is an app that takes Twitter streams and Facebook streams and sort of reformats them and presents them to you in a magazine format. And you can sort of page through the magazine, and if there are pictures attached to the tweet, for example, it'll paste the picture nicely. It's a really fantastic app. I mean, you can retweet articles, for example, and visit the websites where the articles were pulled from. It's very, very rich. Very, very bandwidth heavy, and it's useless on an Edge connection. So I found a nice alternative to that called Pulse News.
Yes, I use that on my Android tablets.
Yes. Pulse Noise. Pulse News is very similar to Flipboard in that you can import a whole bunch of different categories.
You can input your Google Reader feeds as well.
Yes, yeah. And it just presents it to you in such a nice format.
I find it's not quite as pretty as Flipboard.
It's not as pretty,
it's
but
probably the best thing for an
it's easier
Android.
to use when 3G is patchy.
Sure.
I was in Madikwe game reserve over the holidays, and I took my iPad with, and I was trying to use Flipboard, and it was absolutely it was impossible to use because I just had Edge connectivity there, but Pulse worked very nicely.
Cool. So
Pulse News, and something very interesting. Just bringing up Madikwe, Madikwe is right on the Botswana border.
Yeah.
My cell phone, I've got a Vodacom cell phone, so I had Vodacom reception nearly along the whole trip, and then we got our camp that we stayed at was quite close to the Bots border. I mean, we were probably, as the crow flies, maybe 15 k's from the Bots border and about 60 k's from Gaborone, so quite close. I lost all Vodacom reception, as one does in the middle of the bush on any network. But what I found really interesting was I have roaming enabled on my phone, and as soon as we checked into our room and I lay down on the bed to get a nap, I got an SMS. Welcome to Botswana.
Oh, wow.
And in South Africa, 60 k's inside the border, I was roaming on Orange Telecom.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it was pretty good. The reception was pretty good as well. So I didn't make any phone calls or SMSs because it would have cost me like 9 million rand a minute. But
still has to be
but
connected.
very interesting how far the reception can actually sort of transverse borders and stuff. And if you are roaming, you are not without connectivity.
And Vodacom, we love having you as our sponsor.
Yes, absolutely. Vodacom keeps the show free, people.
Absolutely. Give them much love. So sort of moving, because it is the first show of the year, that was your pick of the week. Do you have a particular game, I suspect, because you are our probably most enthusiastic gaming person on ZA Tech Show, a particular game that you are incredibly excited about that's coming up in the next year?
Mass Effect 3.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Why?
I've followed Mass Effect from the beginning. It's the story. The stories are amazing.
Sure.
It's a rich story. There's so many options to explore and little side missions, and I mean, I'm not making it sound very glamorous, but I mean, anybody who's played Mass Effect is just salivating.
There's a lot of great gaming sequels coming up over next year. The new Lara Croft looks surprisingly interesting. It's kind of an origin story reboot sort of thing.
Have you seen the opening cinematic?
Yeah, it's so cool with the ship, and she seems to have had a breast reduction.
She's hardcore,
or pre-breast enlargement, which actually works for her, I must say.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic. Looks very gritty.
Yeah, Mass Effect 3 is probably on my list. If I could have a pick of last year, it would definitely be Battlefield 3.
Really? Yeah.
It's that
I've lost friends to Battlefield 3.
my marriage has been on the rocks many times over the last couple
Actually,
of weeks.
Battlefield 3 is not as bad as Skyrim. People seem to cut off all communication with the outside world. I had every intention of playing Skyrim over the December holidays, but
I never got into Elder
sunshine.
Scrolls. I really didn't.
Really? I played
tried.
Oblivion, and that was beautiful.
It's a beautiful game to look at.
Yeah.
I just didn't. It wasn't enough skin donor for me.
Sure, yeah. It's kind of, you've got to be in the right, very meditative mindset where you kind of just want to run around and forage.
It reminds me of Myst. Do you remember Myst?
Being a vegetarian, I do understand running around in the woods and just foraging. Kind of what I do all day.
My food poos on your food.
Your food couldn't survive without my food. Anyway.
Yeah. So, no, definitely.
Absolutely. My picks of the week, I was thinking about things that might be helpful for anyone who's been naive enough to make New Year's resolutions. I am very bad about making New Year's resolutions, in that I make a whole stack of them. I make all these big promises to myself, and I've been better at kind of turning them into actionable, I don't know, things,
so
which makes me sound like the most boring human being on the planet.
Instead of them falling by the wayside by February, they're over by March.
I find that it helps that if you set your resolutions as things like get fat and start smoking again.
Oh, awesome!
It just you've got to pick the right resolutions.
I always tell people I fought the battle against anorexia and won.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, the gym is pretty full downstairs. Have you noticed?
Yeah, because it's January 9th. So on that note, one of my picks of the week is an iOS app, which means, of course, I haven't actually tried it, but I like the concept, called Gym Pact. So if anyone has promised themselves as a New Year's resolution that they are going to go to the gym every week and they are going to ditch the geek bod, what it does is that you connect it to your bank account, and every time you don't check in at the gym when you say you will, it deducts a certain amount that you agree with yourself from your bank account. So reminding you, which it's totally
cool.
fair, because if you are paying a gym subscription, you are losing money every time you're not going.
Where does the money go?
I have no idea. That's a very
It'd be cool
good
if it
question.
went
Probably
to
Gym Pact
or to charity.
Yeah, I really like that idea. Another one, if one of your resolutions is learning to code, which is a pretty damn cool resolution, it's one of mine, because I want to be a real geek, not just a pretend geek. There's a fantastic site called Code Academy, and Code Academy has been around for a little while, but they sort of haven't just found their reason for being, really. But they've just launched this thing called Code Year. So basically you sign up, and once a week you get a little coding tutorial, and it promises to take about 15 minutes to complete. But if you do that every week for a year, by the end of the year, you'll be pretty proficient at the basics. So I think.
And what do they teach you? What coding languages?
I think I saw something about mainly in JavaScript, but a little bit of Ruby.
Okay.
So it should be pretty cool. Apparently 124,000 people signed up over New Year's weekend. So indicates that learning to code is probably way up there.
That's very cool.
Next to
I think I might actually take that up.
Phoning your mom regularly.
My last exposure to coding was in standard 8 computer science at high school, and
Did they have computer science when you were at
school? It was. We coded on XTs and ATs, and we used Turbo Pascal, and we used to have a little robot called Nikki, which we had to sort of feed commands through Turbo Pascal to navigate him through mazes and stuff.
Cool. I remember there was this, those magazines that you buy week by week and you kind of assemble something. Like they did the How My Body Works series, which I think every middle class family in South Africa has a set of, or half a set of, with half the model. I had one that was build your own robot, and it was so cool. I still have that robot somewhere. It doesn't do anything apart from follow light around. But when I was 12, cool. I was like, oh my God, I made a robot. I can take over the world. Ka-ching.
Modern day Meccano.
Yeah. Other picks relating to New Year's resolutions. A good one for kind of just generally keeping track of things. Really rad little web app called Mindbloom. So what you do is you have this tree. It sounds very hippie schwa, but you have this
You are
tree.
a vegetarian, don't worry.
That sounds so mean. You have a tree, and every branch represents a different part of your life, and so you can kind of set one is family, one is work, and whatever. And you set particular goals against each of these sort of branches, and the branches branch out into sub goals and sub branches and different leaves. And then basically it integrates with your calendar. It gives you resources to accomplish various goals. It's very Oprah, but it's quite cool. And as you achieve things, your tree of life starts blooming and blossoming, and it's quite cool. It's very lame. You're looking at me with that look that says, "Oh my God, you're such a girl." Anyway, it's fine.
It's okay to have some estrogen on the show. I mean, it's way overdue.
You know, I'm not very girly at all. I just have my moments. Yeah. I must say, 2012 looks very exciting from an entertainment perspective. There's the new Batman. There's the Hunger Games.
The Avengers.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! Finally, so much of goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. There's it's going to be a good year to be a geek.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you that.
I think it's a good time generally to be a geek, which is why I feel like if the world ends in December, it's okay because we conquered, Geeks own
are
the
sexy,
world.
man.
Absolutely. I must say, the one thing about the new Batman movie, I don't know if you've seen all the controversy, but
about Bane's voice.
Bane. Yeah. Have you watched the trailer?
Yes,
it's totally unintelligible.
Of course it is.
He's like, I'm so scary looking, I just crumble.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, you're gonna have like, hey, what did he say?
I mean, he kind of, Christopher Nolan took it there with Batman's voice already, sounding a little bit ridiculous.
I'm Batman.
I'm the Batman.
I'm Batman.
But he's the Batman, so it's okay, because the Batman can do that. The Batman can do anything. But I don't know.
I'd like to know what story arc they're going to be following because it's very interesting. There's a whole lot of Easter eggs that Nolan is throwing out too.
Yeah.
And
it
unless
doesn't seem to be quite on the scale of what they did with The Dark Knight, which was amazing, where they had the fake newspapers and the fake news clips and the rallies. There's
a lot of speculation in comic book geek circles that there's one sort of teaser that says the legend ends, for example, and there is a story arc that happened sort of in the late 90s where Bane actually almost killed Batman, and he broke he broke Bruce Wayne's back, and Bruce Wayne could no longer be Batman, and he handed over. I'm sorry if I'm getting too geeky here, just bear with me. He handed over the cowl to a guy named Azrael, who became Batman after that. That was one of DC's universes, obviously. I wonder if Nolan isn't going with that story arc.
That would be brave,
because he has said quite adamantly that this is the last Batman movie he is making.
Yes, yeah.
And there are going to be no ties between this Batman movie and any other movies that may or may not come out of Warner and DC.
I'd love to see him do it. I would love to.
This might be, like I said, it's all speculation. Speaking about speculation, another movie that's going to be very interesting is Prometheus.
Yeah.
Which for all intents and purposes is an Alien prequel, even though Ridley Scott has vehemently denied it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you did you watch the build up to the trailer?
No.
It was very interesting. Ridley Scott over the process of a week released little teasers, little sort of shots from behind the scenes of the making of the trailer. Which culminated in the trailer, and the trailer it blows your mind. If you haven't seen it, go find an HD version and watch it in full HD.
The stills are incredible. Yeah.
I cannot wait for this movie.
Yeah. I'm probably most excited about the Hunger Games just because I love the idea of reality TV that involves people killing each other.
Yes.
I'm just sick like that. Anyway, I think that's death of children on reality television is a good note on which to end the show. So this is 2012.
Yes.
How exciting.
Let's treat it like it's the last one, people.
So ridiculous. Anyway, Nick Callegari from DStv Online, or at Callegari on Twitter. It has been lovely having you join me. Otherwise, I would have been talking to myself for the last hour, and we would have lost
you're riveting conversation, so
visitors.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This was episode 193 of the ZA Tech Show. It is the 9th of January if you're watching us live. And thanks for joining us. The ZA Tech Show is made possible by Vodacom. Power to you at vodacom.co.za, and by BlackBerry. Love doing business on your BlackBerry smartphone at blackberry.co.za. Good night.